remember what you wore on the first day you came into my life, and I thought, hey, you know this could.
There is a world entirely stitched up, where the land is a patchwork quilt and the trees are pincushions. In this world there are Raggles, the boys and girls and men and women and babies, all stitched up in fabric and thread. Quite a few years ago, two very smart and clever but not so wise Raggles decided it would be fun to make a little Raggle. The Raggle they made had the finest linen body, beautiful red velvet lips, and shiny glass button eyes. However, the Raggles that made her were careless and selfish. They did not mend her, fix her, stuff her, or care for her the way that they should. Eventually they went their own ways, tired of where they lived, and they left their daughter behind. The townsfolk made up stories about how they had sewn together a monster and left it to destroy the town. After a while the people stayed away completely, until Ellie came along. Ellie was made by two very poor but kind parents. They had put a lot of care into making Ellie, keeping her mended, and teaching her how to mend herself. Ellie was known very well around the village for making something she called art. She painted pictures on trees, clothes, houses, and anything else that she could find. One day, Ellie was wandering outside the village and she came across the house on the hill. She decided to go and see if she could decorate it. She walked up the hill, and when she got to the zipper door, she tapped gently on the metal, and the zipper began to slide down slowly. An eye appeared through the gap, and Ellie took a step back. "Excuse me," said Ellie nervously. "May I make art on the walls of your home?" There was a slight pause, and Ellie sensed that whoever was behind the door was somewhat surprised. After a few moments, the face nodded slowly. Ellie took a step closer to try and get a better look, but the zipper quickly slid back up. Ellie shrugged her shoulders and proceeded to paint on the walls of the home. When she finished for the day, Ellie called out loudly, "I painted your walls, I hope you like them." A few days later Ellie was sitting at the bottom of the hill. All of a sudden she noticed something on the ground glittering. She looked closer and picked it up to discover that it was a glass button eye. It was a pretty golden colour and sparkled brightly. Ellie wondered how it got there. Suddenly she realised it must have rollen down the hill. Ellie ran up the hill and knocked at the zipper door. No one answered, so Ellie decided to find a way to sneak in. She walked around the edge of the walls and found a way to climb to the top. Losing her footing, Ellie tumbled over the wall and landed on the ground. Plonk! "What are you doing here?" hissed a voice. Dazed, Ellie looked in front of her and held back a gasp. The townsfolk had not lied. Not exactly. The persons standing in the shadows did look terrifying. However, despite the hair standing on end, the bulging legs and arms, and the single eye, Ellie knew it was no monster. It was a Raggle, just like every other Raggle, but this one was falling to pieces. Ellie looked closer at the Raggle's face. "You have beautiful eye," she said, as the eye sparkled brightly back at her. "I know that eye. Here, I think this is yours." Ellie handed over the eye she had put safely in her pocket. The Raggle standing in front of Ellie looked stunned. She took the button and crept back behind the door, hiding herself. "What's your name?" asked Ellie, no longer scared at all. "Gabrielle," said the Raggle, still stunned. "I am going to call you Gabby," said Ellie with a smile. "Why haven't you mended yourself?" "I don't know how to sew," replied Gabby. It all became clear to Ellie. Gabby was no monster, not even close. She had just not been taken care of. "I can help you," said Ellie excitedly. "Why would you want to be friends with a monster?" Gabby asked, a single tear rolling from her only eye. "You aren't a monster," Ellie exclaimed. She took Gabby's hand and led her to the village, telling her about all the menders and stitchers who could fix her right back up the way she should be. However, when the townsfolk saw her coming, they ran screaming into their houses. "See, I am just a monster," cried Gabby, and pulled her hand from Ellie's, turned and ran back home. Ellie followed Gabby home, but Gabby would not see her. For days, Ellie tried to convince Gabby to let her in, but it was no use. One morning, Ellie had a bright idea. She snuck around town and climbed up the hill with a great big bag. She called to Gabby, "Let me in, or I'll just climb the wall again." When Ellie walked in, Gabby was curled up again in the corner, hiding her face. "I can do it!" Ellie exclaimed. "I can help you get all mended." Ellie went to visit Gabby every day for a few weeks. One day she brought a big mirror with her and sat it so Gabby could take a look at herself. "I'm beautiful," Gabby whispered, 2 tears rolling down her cheek this time. "You made me beautiful." "You were always beautiful," Ellie whispered. "I just had to look twice." The townsfolk never really knew what happened to the monster on the hill, but they noticed that the house on the hill was the most colourful and beautiful house in the land, and they often saw Ellie sitting on the hillside with its owner, who was the most beautiful raggle they had ever seen.
So maybe it's true that I can't live without you. And maybe two is better than one. But there's so much time